The Winters had everything most people dream of: a beautiful two-story house with a garden in a quiet neighborhood, good jobs, and a comfortable life. But for all their success, Martin and Elaine felt something was missing. The empty bedroom across from theirs served as a constant reminder of their struggle with infertility. For 7 years, they had tried everything modern medicine offered, but the dream of having a child remained just out of reach. "Maybe it's time we consider adoption," Elaine suggested one evening as they sat on their porch swing. Martin was hesitant at first. He had always imagined passing down his family name to a child with his eyes and Elaine's smile. But as months passed, the idea took root in his heart too. The adoption process wasn't easy. Paperwork piled up on their dining table. Home inspections, background checks, interviews that felt more like interrogations, waiting lists that seemed endless. But the Winters persisted, their eyes fixed on the goal of completing their family. 3 years into the process, they received a call that changed everything. "We have a little girl who might be a good match for your family," said the social worker, her voice crackling over the phone. "She's 8 years old. Her name is Sophia." Sophia had been in the foster care system since she was 4. Her birth parents had lost custody due to substance abuse issues, and she had bounced between 3 different foster homes in 4 years. Despite this difficult start, the social worker described her as resilient and bright. The first meeting took place at a park near the adoption agency. Martin and Elaine arrived an hour early, nervously arranging and rearranging the picnic they had prepared. When Sophia arrived, she was smaller than they expected, with dark hair pulled back in a neat ponytail and eyes that seemed too serious for a child her age. "Hello," she said formally, keeping close to her social worker. The conversation was awkward at first. Sophia answered their questions politely but briefly. She ate very little of the food they brought. But when Elaine mentioned that they had a piano at home, Sophia's eyes lit up for the first time. "I always wanted to learn piano," she said quietly. Over the next few months, they had more meetings, at the park, at their home, at a local ice cream shop. Slowly, Sophia began to trust them. Her smiles came more easily. She asked questions about what it would be like to live with them. By the time the adoption was finalized 6 months later, Sophia had already claimed the empty bedroom, filling it with books from the library and drawings she had made for her new parents. The day Sophia officially moved in, the Winters threw a small welcome party. They invited neighbors and colleagues who brought gifts and well wishes. Sophia stood shyly in her new blue dress, overwhelmed by the attention but clearly pleased. That night, after everyone had gone home, Elaine found Sophia sitting on her bed, carefully arranging the gifts she had received. "Is everything okay?" Elaine asked. Sophia nodded. "I've never had so many things that were just mine before," she said. Life settled into a new rhythm for the family of 3. Sophia started at the local elementary school, where she quickly made friends and impressed her teachers with her eagerness to learn. At home, true to their promise, the Winters arranged for piano lessons. They discovered that Sophia had a natural talent for music, her small fingers dancing across the keys with growing confidence. "She's going to be a prodigy," Martin told friends proudly, recording videos of her practice sessions to share on social media. When Sophia expressed interest in ballet, they immediately signed her up for classes. Weekends became filled with recitals and performances. The Winters sat in the front row at every event, applauding loudly and bringing bouquets of flowers. Their refrigerator door disappeared under a growing collection of drawings, certificates, and photos of Sophia's achievements. To neighbors and friends, they appeared to be the perfect family. Martin, who worked as an architect, even designed a custom study space for Sophia in a corner of their living room, with built-in bookshelves and a desk that could be adjusted as she grew taller. Elaine, a marketing executive, used her connections to get Sophia into the best summer camps and extracurricular programs. "We got so lucky with her," Elaine often told her friends over coffee. "She's such a good kid. No rebellious phase, no attitude problems. Just sweet and talented." What no one outside the family saw were the expectations that came with this praise. Sophia quickly learned that the Winters' approval was tied to her performance. A good report card meant a weekend trip to the amusement park. A successful piano recital earned her a new book or toy. But a missed note during practice could make Martin frown and walk out of the room. A B+ instead of an A might make Elaine sigh and ask, "Didn't you study enough?" Sophia, who had spent years trying to be the perfect foster child to avoid being moved again, adapted to these unspoken rules. She practiced her piano pieces until her fingers ached. She stayed up late studying for tests. She kept her room spotless and always remembered to thank the Winters for everything they gave her. 3 years passed this way. Sophia grew taller, her face losing its childish roundness. For her 11th birthday, the Winters threw an elaborate party at a local country club. There was a chocolate fountain, a hired photographer, and gift bags for all 30 classmates who attended. "Smile for the camera, sweetheart," Elaine said, guiding Sophia to stand between her and Martin for what felt like the 100th photo of the day. Sophia smiled obediently, though her cheeks hurt from doing so for hours. Later, as she opened her presents in front of everyone, she gasped at the sight of a silver necklace with a tiny piano charm. "It's real silver," Martin announced proudly to the room. "Our little musician deserves the best." That night, after the guests had gone and the leftover cake had been put away, Sophia sat on her bed looking at the necklace. She felt grateful but also exhausted in a way she couldn't explain. Sometimes she wondered if the Winters loved her or the idea of her, the talented, obedient daughter they could show off to friends. Still, she reminded herself how lucky she was. She had a family now, a permanent home, so many things she had wished for during those lonely nights in foster care. If she had to be perfect to keep it all, then that's what she would be. What Sophia didn't know was that her life was about to change in ways she couldn't imagine. The first signs were small, a stumble during ballet class that her teacher attributed to growing pains, handwriting that suddenly became messier, causing her teacher to ask if she was rushing through her work, fatigue that made it hard to practice piano for as long as she used to. "I'm just tired," she told the Winters when they noticed her nodding off over dinner one evening. Martin and Elaine exchanged concerned looks across the table, not because they sensed something was wrong with Sophia's health, but because they worried her performance might slip. The spring piano competition was coming up, and Sophia was expected to win first place in her age group, just as she had done the previous year. "Early to bed tonight," Elaine declared. "We need you at your best." Sophia nodded and forced herself to sit up straighter, ignoring the strange tingling sensation in her right hand. She would be fine. She had to be. The Winters had given her everything, and disappointing them wasn't an option. As she climbed the stairs to her bedroom that night, Sophia stumbled again, catching herself on the railing. For a brief moment, fear flashed across her face, but she quickly pushed it away, straightening her shoulders the way she'd learned to do before piano performances. Whatever was happening, she would overcome it. The Winters had chosen her, and she would prove she was worth choosing. Sophia had no way of knowing that the Winters' love came with conditions she would soon be unable to meet, or that the perfect family picture they had created was about to shatter into pieces. The morning of Sophia's big ballet recital arrived with perfect spring weather. Sunlight streamed through her bedroom window as Elaine helped her into the pale pink tutu they had special ordered 3 months ago. "You're going to be the star of the show," Elaine said, carefully pinning Sophia's hair into a tight bun. Mrs. Winters' daughter, the ballerina. Sophia tried to smile, but her stomach was in knots. For weeks she'd been struggling during practice. Her right leg sometimes felt strange, heavy and uncooperative, and yesterday she had fallen twice while rehearsing her solo. She hadn't told Elaine or Martin about these problems. They had already paid for professional photographs to be taken at the recital, and Martin had invited his boss to attend. "I think I need to practice my solo one more time," Sophia said. "There's no time, honey. We need to be at the theater in 30 minutes. Elaine stepped back to admire her handiwork. "Perfect. Now remember what we talked about. Chin up, big smile, and make eye contact with the judges." 2 hours later, Sophia stood in the wings of the stage, watching the other girls in her class complete their group number. Her turn was next, a solo that Mrs. Chen, her ballet teacher, had choreographed especially for her. Music filled the auditorium as Sophia took a deep breath and stepped onto the stage. The first minute went well. Sophia felt the familiar joy of dancing, of becoming one with the music. But then as she prepared for her first pirouette, her right leg buckled beneath her. She caught herself before falling, turning the mistake into an improvised move, but she could feel something was very wrong. Her leg felt numb, and when she tried to point her toes, they barely responded. From the audience, Martin and Elaine watched with growing horror as their daughter stumbled through the rest of her performance. When Sophia finally took her bow, the applause was polite but muted. Backstage, Elaine found her sitting alone, still in her costume. "What happened out there?" Elaine asked, her voice tight with disappointment. "I don't know," Sophia whispered. "My leg wouldn't work right. It fell asleep, like when you sit on it too long." "You've been practicing for months. This was your moment to shine." Elaine sighed heavily. "Your father's boss was very impressed with the other girls." Martin joined them, his face a mask of forced cheerfulness. "Well, that was different. Are you feeling okay, Sophia?" Before she could answer, Mrs. Chen approached. "Sophia, may I speak with you and your parents?" The ballet teacher's face was creased with concern. "I've noticed some changes in Sophia's coordination over the past few weeks. Today's performance confirms what I've been worried about. I think it might be a good idea to have her checked by a doctor." The Winters exchanged glances. "She's probably just growing," Martin said dismissively. "Kids get clumsy at this age." Mrs. Chen pressed her lips together. "Perhaps. But I've been teaching ballet for 25 years. Mr. Winters, this doesn't look like typical growing pains to me." That night, Sophia overheard her parents arguing in the kitchen. "We should take her to Dr. Patterson," Elaine said. "What if it's something serious?" "It's not serious," Martin insisted. "She probably just didn't practice enough. Or maybe she's doing it for attention." The recital was a disaster. Everyone was talking about it. "Fine, make an appointment. But I'm telling you, there's nothing wrong with her that more practice wouldn't fix." Dr. Patterson examined Sophia thoroughly, testing her reflexes and asking her to perform simple tasks like touching her nose with her finger and walking in a straight line. "How long have you been experiencing these symptoms?" he asked. Sophia glanced at Elaine before answering. "A few weeks. Maybe longer. My handwriting has gotten really bad too. My teacher asked if I was rushing, but I wasn't." Dr. Patterson made some notes. "I'd like to refer Sophia to a neurologist. Dr. Rivera has an excellent reputation for pediatric cases." "A neurologist?" Elaine's voice rose slightly. "You think there's something wrong with her brain?" "I think we need more information," Dr. Patterson said carefully. "The symptoms Sophia is describing could have many causes. Dr. Rivera will be able to run the appropriate tests." The waiting room at Dr. Rivera's office was filled with children in various states of health. Some played quietly with toys while others sat in wheelchairs or leaned on crutches. Sophia felt Martin stiffen beside her as they took seats near the window. "We don't belong here," he muttered to Elaine. "This is a waste of time." But when Dr. Rivera called them in, her warm smile and direct manner seemed to ease some of the tension. She asked Sophia dozens of questions about her symptoms, then performed tests similar to those Dr. Patterson had done, along with several new ones. "I'd like to order an MRI," Dr. Rivera said finally, "and some blood tests. We need to rule out several possibilities." "What possibilities?" Elaine asked, her knuckles white as she gripped her purse. Dr. Rivera looked steadily at the Winters. "I don't want to speculate until we have more information. The good news is that we can schedule these tests quickly. The sooner we know what we're dealing with, the sooner we can help Sophia." The next 2 weeks were a blur of medical appointments. Sophia had blood drawn, underwent a long MRI where she had to lie perfectly still inside a noisy machine, and visited specialists who tested her vision, strength, and coordination. Through it all, the Winters were present but increasingly distant, as if preparing themselves for bad news. Finally, Dr. Rivera called them back to her office. Sophia noticed that another doctor had joined her, an older woman introduced as Dr. Patel. "We have Sophia's test results," Dr. Rivera began, her voice gentle. "The MRI shows several lesions, areas of damage in Sophia's brain and spinal cord. Combined with her symptoms and the other test results, we believe Sophia has juvenile multiple sclerosis." Elaine gasped. Martin sat perfectly still, his face blank. "What does that mean?" Sophia asked in a small voice. Dr. Patel leaned forward. "Multiple sclerosis is a condition where your immune system attacks the protective covering of your nerves. This causes problems with how signals travel between your brain and body. In your case, that's why you're having trouble with coordination and feeling in your legs and hands. Can you fix it?" Martin asked bluntly. The doctors exchanged glances. "MS isn't something we can cure," Dr. Rivera explained. "But we can treat it. There are medications that can help reduce flare-ups and slow the progression." "Progression?" Elaine repeated. You mean it gets worse? MS affects everyone differently, Dr. Patel said. Some people have mild symptoms that come and go. Others experience a more progressive form of the disease. With children, it's particularly hard to predict. Will I still be able to play piano and dance? Sophia's voice trembled. Dr. Rivera reached for her hand. We're going to do everything we can to help you keep doing the things you love, Sophia. But there may be times when your symptoms make certain activities difficult. You might need to take breaks or find new ways to do things. What about special equipment? Accommodations? Martin asked, his voice tight. Yes, we'll need to discuss those, Dr. Patel nodded. Sophia may eventually need mobility aids. A cane, perhaps a wheelchair for longer distances. Your home might require some modifications, and her school will need to develop an accommodation plan. The drive home was silent. Sophia sat in the back seat watching her parents' rigid profiles. At home, Elaine went straight to her bedroom while Martin made a series of phone calls from his office. His voice too low for Sophia to hear. That evening, Sophia found her sheet music moved from the piano to a shelf. When she asked about her lesson scheduled for the next day, Elaine sighed heavily. I canceled it. You need to rest. But I feel okay today, Sophia protested. Dr. Rivera said I should try to keep doing normal activities. Piano lessons are expensive, Sophia, Martin cut in. And with all these medical bills coming. He trailed off, leaving the sentence unfinished. Over the next few weeks, more changes followed. Sophia's ballet classes were canceled too. The Winters began having whispered conversations that abruptly stopped when Sophia entered the room. Twice she heard Elaine crying behind their bedroom door. At school, Sophia's teacher was told about her diagnosis, and accommodations were arranged, extra time for tests, permission to use the elevator instead of stairs, a second set of textbooks to keep at home so she wouldn't have to carry heavy books. Some days were better than others. On good days, Sophia could almost forget she was sick. On bad days, her hands shook so badly she couldn't write, or her legs felt like they were wading through mud. The Winters' reactions to these good and bad days confused Sophia. When she felt well and tried to return to her old activities, they seemed annoyed, reminding her of her limitations. But on her worst days, when she needed help, their assistance came with sighs and tight-lipped smiles that didn't reach their eyes. One evening, Sophia overheard a conversation that made her blood run cold. This isn't what we signed up for, Martin was saying. We wanted a daughter, not a patient. Lower your voice, Elaine hissed. She'll hear you. I don't care anymore, Martin replied, his voice breaking. Do you know what this is going to cost us? The medical bills, the house renovations, special equipment, not to mention college. She was supposed to get scholarships with her music. What are you saying? Elaine asked. I'm saying we made a mistake. We chose her because she was perfect, smart, talented, healthy. Now, Sophia backed away from the door, her heart pounding. Now she understood the growing coldness, the canceled lessons, the disappointed looks. The Winters had wanted a perfect child, and she was no longer perfect. That night, Sophia cried silently into her pillow, wondering what would happen to her. Would they send her back to foster care? Could they even do that? She was almost 12 now, adopted for nearly 4 years. But the fear that had followed her through multiple foster homes returned, stronger than ever. The next morning, Martin announced over breakfast that they were going on a family camping trip that weekend. Fresh air will do us all good, he said, not meeting Sophia's eyes. Pack warm clothes. The forecast says it might get cold at night. Sophia nodded, relief washing over her. Maybe she had misunderstood the conversation she'd overheard. Maybe the Winters just needed time to adjust to her diagnosis. A family trip sounded like a good sign. She had no way of knowing that the Winters had already emptied her school locker, withdrawn her from classes, and begun telling neighbors that Sophia would be going to a special facility, better equipped to handle her condition. The camping trip to Oakwood National Forest wasn't meant to heal their family. It was the Winters' solution to the problem Sophia had become. Sophia packed her bag with a mixture of hope and worry. She folded her warmest sweater and tucked it beside her jeans and t-shirts, trying to ignore the tremor in her hands. The camping trip might be exactly what their family needed, a chance to remember why they had become a family in the first place. Do you need help with that? Elaine asked from the doorway. Her voice was kinder than it had been in weeks, reinforcing Sophia's hope. I'm okay, Sophia said, not wanting to remind Elaine of her condition. I packed my medications in the side pocket. Elaine nodded. Good. We'll be leaving early tomorrow. Your father wants to reach the campsite before noon. That night, Sophia found it hard to sleep. She kept thinking about what she had overheard her parents saying. Had she misunderstood? Maybe the camping trip was proof that they weren't giving up on her after all. She fell asleep clutching the little piano charm necklace they had given her for her birthday, before everything changed. The drive to Oakwood National Forest took 3 hours. Sophia sat in the back seat with her headphones on, watching the city buildings give way to suburbs and then to rolling countryside. Martin and Elaine barely spoke, but Sophia didn't find this unusual. They had all been quiet since her diagnosis. Have you been here before? Sophia asked, trying to break the silence as they turned onto a narrow road marked with a wooden sign for the forest. Once years ago, Martin answered, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. It's very peaceful. The campsite was deeper in the forest than Sophia had expected. Martin drove past the main camping area with its picnic tables and fire pits, continuing on a rougher road until they reached a small clearing surrounded by tall pine trees. Isn't this too far from everyone else? Sophia asked as they parked. We wanted privacy, Elaine said quickly, away from people who might stare. Sophia understood immediately. They didn't want strangers asking questions about her condition or offering help if she had trouble walking. The realization stung, but she pushed the feeling away. At least they had brought her with them instead of leaving her behind. Setting up camp took longer than expected. Martin struggled with the tent while Elaine organized their supplies. Sophia tried to help, but after dropping a bag of tent pegs twice, Martin told her to sit and rest. I'm not tired, she protested. Just sit down, Sophia, he snapped. Then, seeing her hurt expression, added more gently, you can help by reading the instructions to me. By late afternoon, their campsite was ready. A blue tent stood in the middle of the clearing, with a small fire pit nearby that Martin had ringed with stones. The forest around them was quiet except for the occasional bird call and the rustling of leaves in the breeze. It's pretty here, Sophia said, trying again to connect with her parents. Elaine nodded, looking around. Yes, it is. As the sun began to set, Martin built a fire and Elaine prepared a simple dinner of hot dogs and beans. Sophia noticed that they had packed more food than seemed necessary for a weekend trip. How long are we staying? She asked. Martin and Elaine exchanged a quick glance. We haven't decided yet, Martin said. Maybe 3 or 4 days. I have some vacation time saved up. After dinner, they sat around the fire. For a while, it almost felt normal, like the family camping trips they had taken before. Martin even told a few jokes that made Sophia laugh. But when the conversation naturally turned to what they would do the next day, both adults became vague. We'll see how everyone feels in the morning, Elaine said. As darkness fell completely, Sophia began to feel tired. The day's excitement and the fresh air had worn her out. I think I'll go to bed, she said, stifling a yawn. Good idea, Elaine agreed quickly. You must be exhausted. Inside the tent, Sophia changed into her pajamas and snuggled into her sleeping bag. Outside, she could hear her parents talking in low voices. She wished she could hear what they were saying. But the rustling of the trees masked their words. Eventually, her eyelids grew heavy and she drifted off to sleep. Sophia wasn't sure what time it was when she woke up. The tent was dark, lit only by a small flashlight someone had left beside her sleeping bag. She reached for her phone to check the time but couldn't find it in her bag where she had left it. Mom? She called softly. Dad? There was no answer. Sophia sat up, suddenly aware that she was alone in the tent. Maybe they were sitting by the fire. She unzipped the tent flap and peered outside. The clearing was empty. The fire had died down to glowing embers. Their camping chairs were still there, but there was no sign of Martin or Elaine. Mom? Dad? She called again, louder this time. Her voice echoed slightly among the trees. Sophia crawled out of the tent, wincing as her stiff legs protested the movement. The night air was cold and she shivered in her thin pajamas. Where could they have gone? Maybe to the bathroom, she thought, though she didn't remember seeing any facilities nearby. She picked up the flashlight and shone it around the campsite. That's when she noticed that Martin and Elaine's sleeping bags were gone from the tent. So was their duffel bag, and the car that had been parked just 20 feet away was no longer there. No, Sophia whispered, her heart beginning to race. No, they wouldn't. But as she moved the flashlight beam across the campsite, the evidence became clear. The cooler with their food was still there, but the bag with their personal items was gone. Her parents' camping chairs were empty. Their shoes no longer lined up beside the tent. Only her things remained. "Mom, Dad!" Sophia screamed, panic rising in her chest. Her voice bounced back to her from the surrounding trees. "Where are you?" Silence answered her. In the distance, an owl hooted, the sound eerie in the darkness. They had left her. The realization hit Sophia like a physical blow. The camping trip, the kindness, the jokes around the fire. It had all been part of a plan to leave her behind. They can't have gone far, she told herself, fighting back tears. They'll come back, Sophia forced herself to think. What would a normal person do in this situation? Call for help, of course. But her phone was missing. They must have taken it. Was there a ranger station nearby? She had no idea how far they had driven into the forest or in which direction the main road lay. Her MS symptoms always worsened when she was stressed or tired, and now her legs felt leaden as she paced around the campsite. The flashlight beam bounced wildly as her hands trembled. "Think," she whispered to herself. "Think." In the cooler, she found bottles of water and enough food for a few days. At least they hadn't left her to starve. Her medication was still in her backpack, but the nights were cold in the forest and she only had the clothes they had allowed her to pack. Sophia crawled back into the tent, pulled her sleeping bag around her shoulders, and tried to make sense of what had happened. The Winters had decided she was too much trouble, too expensive, too difficult, too imperfect, so they had driven her to a remote spot in the forest and abandoned her. Would anyone even look for her? The Winters had withdrawn her from school. They had canceled her piano and ballet lessons. Had they told people she was gone already? Did they have some story prepared? Tears flowed freely now as Sophia huddled in the tent. She had lived through rejection before, as a small child bounced between foster homes. But this was different. The Winters had chosen her, had promised to be her forever family, and now they had thrown her away because she was broken. As the hours passed, Sophia drifted in and out of sleep. Each time she woke, she hoped to find it had all been a bad dream. But the emptiness of the tent and the silence of the forest confirmed her reality. Morning brought pale light filtering through the trees, but no relief from her situation. Sophia forced herself to eat a granola bar from the cooler and take her medication. Then she tried to formulate a plan. Her power wheelchair, which she sometimes needed on bad days, was at home. But the Winters had packed her collapsible cane, perhaps to maintain the illusion they were caring for her needs. With the cane's support, Sophia slowly explored the area around the campsite, looking for a path or road. The forest floor was uneven, covered with fallen leaves and pine needles that made walking with her cane difficult. Twice she stumbled and fell, the second time scraping her palm on a rock. But she pushed herself up each time and continued searching. By midday, Sophia had found what looked like a hiking trail, marked with occasional blue blazes on the trees. She had no idea where it led, but it was better than staying at the campsite waiting for help that might never come. She returned to the tent to gather supplies. She found a small backpack and filled it with water bottles, some food, her medication, and a blanket. The load was heavy, and she knew she couldn't carry much more, especially given how her body was already struggling with the stress and exertion. Sophia took one last look at the campsite where her adopted parents had left her to face the wilderness alone. The blue tent, her home for one night, now seemed like a monument to their betrayal. "I don't need them," she said aloud, her voice sounding small in the vast forest. "I'll find my way out of here." But as Sophia turned toward the trail, leaning heavily on her cane, a wave of dizziness washed over her. Her right leg buckled and she sat down hard on the ground. Her body was failing her at the worst possible moment. Night would come again in a few hours. The temperature would drop. Wild animals would become active. And Sophia was alone in Oakwood National Forest, a young girl with a disability, abandoned by the very people who had promised to protect her. As she sat on the ground, fighting back tears of frustration and fear, Sophia didn't know that fate was already setting events in motion that would lead to her rescue. She didn't know that her story would soon capture the attention of an entire nation. All she knew was that she had to survive 1 minute at a time, until help arrived or she found her way to safety. Tomas Rodriguez loved the quiet of the evening patrol. After a day of answering tourist questions and reminding campers about fire safety, the peaceful sunset hours in Oakwood National Forest were his reward. As a park ranger for nearly 15 years, he knew every trail and clearing in his section of the vast woodland. This evening, he walked with Luna, his German Shepherd service dog. Though Luna was primarily trained to alert for Thomas's seizure disorder, she had proven herself a skilled tracking dog on multiple occasions, helping to find lost hikers and children who had wandered away from campsites. Just a quick check of the north trails. Girl, then we'll head back, Thomas told Luna as they set off from his truck. The radio at his belt crackled occasionally with routine communications from other rangers. But nothing urgent had come through all day. They had been walking for about 20 minutes when Luna's behavior suddenly changed. Her ears perked up and she stopped, nose twitching as she sampled the air. "What is it, Luna?" Thomas asked, immediately alert. The dog turned away from the main trail, pulling toward a rarely used path that led deeper into the forest. Thomas hesitated. This area wasn't on his patrol route for the evening, and daylight was fading. But Luna's body language was insistent. This wasn't a squirrel or a deer that had caught her attention. "Okay, girl. Show me." Luna moved forward purposefully, pausing occasionally to make sure Thomas was following. The path grew narrower, winding through dense trees. Thomas switched on his flashlight as shadows lengthened around them. After about half a mile, Luna broke into a run, then stopped abruptly at the edge of a small clearing. In the beam of Thomas's flashlight, a blue tent came into view. This wasn't one of the designated camping areas. Occasionally, hikers would set up camp in unauthorized spots despite the park's clear rules against it. "Hello?" Thomas called out. "Park ranger. Is anyone here?" No response came from the tent. Thomas approached cautiously, noting signs of hasty departure. A camping chair knocked over, food wrappers scattered around a cold fire pit. Luna circled the clearing, nose to the ground, then suddenly barked and raced into the woods beyond the campsite. "Luna, come back," Thomas called, but the dog ignored him, something she rarely did. Cursing under his breath, Thomas followed, pushing through underbrush until he found Luna standing over a small, crumpled form on the ground. It was a child, a young girl, lying unconscious among the fallen leaves. She was breathing, but her skin felt cold to the touch, and she didn't respond when Thomas gently shook her shoulder. "Hey there, can you hear me?" he asked, checking for injuries. Finding none immediately visible, he keyed his radio. "Base, this is Rodriguez. I've got a medical emergency in Sector 7, approximately 2 miles northeast of Campbell Creek. Juvenile female, unconscious but breathing. Possible exposure. Requesting immediate medical evacuation." The radio crackled. "Copy that, Rodriguez. Medical team dispatching now. ETA 20 minutes. While waiting for help to arrive, Thomas wrapped the girl in his emergency blanket and continued to monitor her condition. Luna lay down beside the child, providing additional warmth. As Thomas brushed leaves from the girl's hair, he noticed something glinting in the flashlight beam. A medical alert bracelet on her wrist. "Juvenile multiple sclerosis," he read aloud. "Sophia Winters." The bracelet listed medications and emergency contact information. The same phone number twice, presumably her parents. Thomas immediately tried calling, but both attempts went straight to voicemail. Something about this situation felt very wrong. Why would a child with a serious medical condition be alone in the woods nearly a mile from an already remote campsite? Where were her parents? And why did the campsite look as if people had left in a hurry? When the medical team arrived, Thomas briefed them on what he'd found. "She's been out here for hours at least," said the lead paramedic as they loaded Sophia onto a stretcher. "Her body temperature is too low and she's severely dehydrated. We need to get her to the hospital immediately." "I'll follow you," Thomas said, "and I'm calling the sheriff. This doesn't look like a kid who just wandered off." Meanwhile, about 5 miles away at the main campground of Oakwood National Forest, the Chen family was settling in for their first night of vacation. Their daughters, ages 10 and 8, were roasting marshmallows while their parents set up the last of their camping gear. "Look what I found, Mom," called the younger girl, running up with something clutched in her small hand. It was by the bathroom. Her mother took the object, a silver necklace with a tiny piano charm. "It's pretty, honey. Someone must have lost it. Can I keep it?" "No, we should turn it into the ranger station tomorrow. Someone might be looking for it." As she slipped the necklace into her pocket, Mrs. Chen had no idea that this small act of honesty would help unravel the mystery of what had happened to Sophia Winters. The following morning, Mrs. Chen brought the necklace to the ranger station near the campground entrance. It was near the restrooms by campsite area C, she explained to the ranger on duty. My daughter found it last night. The ranger, Diane Powell, logged the found item in the park system. Under normal circumstances, the necklace would have been placed in the lost and found box and forgotten. But Diane had just received an alert about a young girl found alone in the forest the previous night, and park staff had been asked to report anything unusual. Thank you for turning this in, Diane told Mrs. Chen. If no one claims it in 30 days, you can check back to see if you can keep it. After the Chen family left, Diane examined the necklace more closely. It looked expensive for a child's jewelry, and when she turned it over, she noticed something engraved on the back of the piano charm. To Sophia, our perfect melody, Sophia, the same name as the girl found in the woods. Diane immediately called Tomas Rodriguez, who had stayed at the hospital with the rescued girl. The girl you found, what was her name again? Sophia Winters, Thomas replied. She's still unconscious. The doctors say she's suffering from exposure and dehydration, complicated by her medical condition. Someone just turned in a necklace with her name on it. It was found at the main campground, miles from where you found her. Tomas was silent for a moment. That doesn't make sense unless someone deliberately left her in that remote spot and then drove out through the main campground. I'm calling the sheriff, Diane said. This is looking more like a criminal investigation by the minute. At Pine County Hospital, Sophia finally regained consciousness late that afternoon. She opened her eyes to find unfamiliar faces looking down at her with concern. Where am I? She whispered, her throat dry and painful. You're in the hospital, said a nurse gently. You were found in the forest last night. Do you remember what happened? Memories flooded back. The camping trip, waking up alone, trying to find help, collapsing in the woods. Tears filled Sophia's eyes. They left me, she said. My parents. They drove away while I was sleeping. The adults exchanged shocked glances. In the corner of the room, Sheriff Gail Henderson stepped forward. Sophia, I'm Sheriff Henderson. Can you tell me your full name and your parents' names? Sophia Winters. My parents are Martin and Elaine Winters. Her voice trembled. They adopted me 4 years ago. The sheriff nodded, making notes. And they left you alone in the forest? On purpose? Sophia nodded, tears streaming down her face. Because I got sick. I have MS, they said. I heard them say I wasn't what they signed up for. Tomas Rodriguez, who had been standing quietly by the door, felt a wave of anger wash over him. In 15 years as a park ranger, he'd seen plenty of human carelessness and stupidity, but nothing like this calculated cruelty. You're safe now, the sheriff assured Sophia. We're going to find your parents and sort this out. Finding the Winters proved easier than expected. Confident that their plan had worked, they had returned to their home and begun telling neighbors that Sophia had been transferred to a special care facility out of state. When Sheriff Henderson and 2 deputies arrived at their door that evening, the Winters were hosting a small dinner party. Elaine answered the door in a cocktail dress, wine glass in hand. Can I help you? She asked, frowning at the uniforms on her doorstep. Mrs. Winters, I'm Sheriff Henderson from Pine County. We need to speak with you and your husband about your daughter, Sophia. The color drained from Elaine's face. I don't know what you're talking about. Our daughter is at a specialized treatment center in Vermont. That's interesting, the sheriff replied coldly, because she's actually at Pine County Hospital, recovering from being abandoned in Oakwood National Forest. From inside the house, Martin appeared in the hallway. Elaine, who's at the door? The sheriff stepped forward. Mr. and Mrs. Winters, you're both under arrest for child endangerment and abandonment. You have the right to remain silent. As the deputies led the shocked couple to separate patrol cars, neighbors emerged from surrounding houses, watching in confusion. One woman pushed through the small crowd. What's happening? Where are they taking them? They abandoned their daughter in the forest, the sheriff explained grimly. Left her to die because she has a medical condition. Gasps and murmurs spread through the onlookers. Inside the patrol car, Elaine Winters covered her face with her hands, while Martin stared straight ahead, his face a mask of defiance. Back at the hospital, Sophia slept unaware that her ordeal had ended, that the people who had thrown her away like a broken toy were now facing the consequences of their actions. Beside her bed, Luna the German Shepherd lay on the floor, having refused to leave the girl's side. Tomas had received special permission to bring his service dog into the hospital. sensing that Sophia needed the comfort of the animal that had saved her life. As night fell over Pine County, the story of the abandoned girl began to spread, from the hospital staff to local media, from the neighbors who had witnessed the Winters' arrest to social media. By morning, Sophia's story would reach thousands, then millions of people, touching hearts and igniting outrage across the country. But for now, she slept peacefully, safe at last, while fate continued to work its quiet magic in her favor. By morning, reporters had gathered outside Pine County Hospital. The story of a girl with a disability abandoned in the forest by her adoptive parents spread rapidly across news channels and social media. People across the country were shocked and outraged. Inside the hospital, Sophia remained sheltered from the growing media storm. The staff had been instructed not to discuss her case or allow unauthorized visitors into her room. A police officer was stationed outside her door, both for her protection and because she was now a key witness in a criminal case. Sophia slept fitfully that first night, waking several times from nightmares where she was lost in endless woods. Each time she found Luna still there, the German Shepherd's warm presence a comfort in the unfamiliar hospital room. "She seems to have decided you're her responsibility now," Thomas Rodriguez explained when Sophia asked why the dog stayed. "Luna was the one who found you in the forest. I think she's making sure you're really okay." Sophia reached out to stroke Luna's soft fur. "Thank you," she whispered to the dog. The door opened and a woman in a white coat entered, followed by a social worker Sophia had met briefly the previous evening. "Good morning, Sophia. I'm Dr. Wilson," the woman said with a gentle smile. "How are you feeling today?" "Better, I think," Sophia replied. Her body still ached, but the terrible cold that had seeped into her bones in the forest was gone. "Your test results look good. The fluids and medication have helped and your MS symptoms seem to be stabilizing. But we'd like to keep you here for a few more days to be certain." Sophia nodded, then asked the question that had been gnawing at her since she woke. "What's going to happen to me now?" The social worker, Mrs. Taylor, stepped forward. "The court has granted emergency custody to the state. You'll stay here until you're well enough to be discharged, and then we'll find a suitable foster placement for you." "Another foster home?" Sophia's voice quavered. After what had happened with the Winters, the thought of another placement filled her with dread. "Just temporarily," Mrs. Taylor assured her. "Given your medical needs, we want to find the right situation." The next few days fell into a routine. Doctors and nurses checked on Sophia regularly. A physical therapist helped her regain strength. Mrs. Taylor brought books and a small stuffed animal for comfort. Thomas visited daily with Luna, his shifts at the forest arranged to allow these visits. On Sophia's third day in the hospital, a nurse named Rebecca Collins was assigned to her care. Rebecca was different from the other nurses. She took extra time to talk with Sophia, explaining each medication and procedure clearly, and never showing impatience when Sophia's hands trembled or her words came slowly. "My daughter has juvenile arthritis," Rebecca explained when Sophia asked why she seemed to understand so well. "Lily is 12, just a year older than you. She has good days and bad days too. Does she have to use a wheelchair sometimes?" Sophia asked hesitantly. "Sometimes, yes, and crutches other times. We've learned to adapt." Rebecca adjusted Sophia's pillows. "She's actually been following your story and asked if she could meet you. Would that be okay?" Sophia nodded, surprised that someone would want to meet her. The next afternoon, Rebecca brought Lily to visit. She was tall for her age, with curly hair pulled back in a ponytail, and she used forearm crutches to walk. What struck Sophia most was Lily's smile, wide and genuine, without a trace of the pity Sophia had grown to recognize in people's faces. "Hi," Lily said, settling into the chair beside Sophia's bed. "I'm really glad you're okay. Everyone at my school is talking about you." "They are?" Sophia asked, alarmed. "Don't worry, it's all good stuff. People are really angry at your ex-parents. There's even a fundraiser to help with your medical care." The girls talked for nearly an hour. Sophia found herself laughing for the first time in weeks as Lily described her attempt to train her pet goldfish to do tricks. There was something freeing about talking to someone who understood what it was like to have a body that didn't always cooperate. After Lily left, Sophia felt lighter somehow. It was the first time since her diagnosis that she'd spoken to another child with a chronic illness, someone who didn't treat her condition as a tragedy or a burden. Meanwhile, the legal case against the Winters moved forward. Sophia gave her statement to the district attorney, describing how her parents' attitude had changed after her diagnosis and the details of the camping trip where they'd abandoned her. Though painful to relive, Sophia felt stronger with each telling, especially with Luna lying protectively at her feet during the interview. News about the case continued to spread. Advocacy groups for adopted children and people with disabilities spoke out, demanding justice. The piano charm necklace found by the Chen family became a powerful symbol in news reports, a gift given to a child who was loved only when she was perfect. 1 week after her rescue, Sophia was well enough to be discharged from the hospital. The question of where she would go loomed large. Mrs. Taylor had identified several potential foster homes, but none seemed ideal for Sophia's specific needs. The evening before her discharge, Rebecca Collins came to Sophia's room after her shift ended. She seemed nervous, fidgeting with her ID badge. "Sophia, I wanted to talk to you about something important," she began, sitting on the edge of the bed. "Lily and I have been talking and, well, we were wondering how you'd feel about coming to stay with us. Temporarily at first as a foster placement." Sophia stared at her in disbelief. "You want me to live with you?" Rebecca nodded. "Our apartment isn't huge, but it's already set up with accessibility features for Lily. We have a spare room that would be yours. And most importantly, Lily is beyond excited about the idea of having you as a sister. But my medical care, all the appointments. I'm a nurse, remember? And I've been navigating the healthcare system for years with Lily. I know it won't always be easy, but I also know we can make it work." For a moment, Sophia couldn't speak, after being thrown away by people who decided she was too difficult. Here was someone volunteering to take her in, fully aware of her condition and needs. "You don't have to decide right now," Rebecca added quickly. "Mrs. Taylor is looking into whether I qualify as a foster parent. There would be home visits and paperwork. But I wanted you to know that there's a place for you if you want it." That night, Sophia lay awake thinking about Rebecca's offer. She tried not to get her hopes up. She'd learned the hard way how quickly dreams could crumble. But something about Rebecca and Lily felt different from the perfectly polished facade the Winters had presented. The next morning, Mrs. Taylor arrived with news. "Rebecca Collins has been approved as an emergency foster placement," she announced. "Her background as a pediatric nurse and her experience with a child with special needs makes her uniquely qualified. Would you like to go home with her today?" 2 hours later, Sophia found herself entering a cozy apartment on the ground floor of a brick building. Unlike the Winters' immaculate showcase home, this place felt lived in and warm. Books spilled from shelves, colorful artwork covered the walls, and a fat orange cat regarded her curiously from the couch. "That's Pumpkin," Lily explained, dropping her crutches by the door. "He thinks he owns the place. Come on, I'll show you your room." The spare room was small but bright, with a window overlooking a tiny garden. Someone, Lily, Sophia guessed, had hung a welcome sign on the door and placed a vase of daisies on the dresser. "We can paint the walls any color you want," Rebecca said, setting Sophia's bag on the bed. "And get different furniture if this doesn't work for you." "It's perfect," Sophia whispered, overwhelmed by the simple kindness of this gesture. In the months that followed, Sophia settled into life with Rebecca and Lily. There were challenges, of course. Bad days when her symptoms flared and simple tasks became mountains to climb. Nightmares about the forest that left her gasping for breath. Painful testimony at the Winters trial, where she had to face her former parents across a courtroom. The Winters were found guilty on all counts. The judge, clearly moved by Sophia's testimony and the evidence of their calculated abandonment, sentenced them to 5 years in prison and substantial fines. They showed no remorse, maintaining that they hadn't signed up for a disabled child, a statement that only increased public outrage. But there were good days too, more of them as time passed. Sophia started at a new school where Lily introduced her as "my sister." She joined a music therapy program and rediscovered her love of piano without the pressure of perfection. Rebecca worked with her doctors to find the best treatment plan for her MS, celebrating the good days and creating a safe space for the difficult ones. 6 months turned into a year. The temporary foster placement became a more permanent arrangement. Rebecca began the lengthy process to legally adopt Sophia, a decision they made together as a family. "Are you sure you want to adopt again?" Mrs. Taylor asked Sophia gently during one of her regular visits. After what happened before, no one would blame you for being hesitant. Sophia looked around the living room where they sat. Lily was sprawled on the floor working on a science project, her leg braces set aside. Pumpkin the cat was purring in Sophia's lap. From the kitchen came the sound of Rebecca singing off-key to the radio as she prepared dinner. "I'm sure," Sophia said firmly. "This is different. They know the real me, not some perfect version they made up in their heads." On the 1-year anniversary of her rescue, Sophia returned to Oakwood National Forest with Rebecca, Lily, and Thomas Rodriguez. Luna bounded ahead on the trail, occasionally returning to check on the group. They didn't visit the spot where Sophia had been abandoned. Instead, they went to a sunny clearing where a new bench had been installed bearing a small plaque. "For those who find themselves lost. Help is on the way." As Sophia sat on the bench surrounded by people who had chosen to love her, disability and all, she thought about how differently things had turned out from what the Winters had planned. They had left her in the forest expecting nature to solve their problem. Instead, fate had stepped in, bringing her to a family where her worth wasn't measured by her abilities or achievements. "Ready to head back?" Rebecca asked, offering a hand. Sophia nodded and stood, leaning slightly on her cane. "Ready." Together they walked back toward the future that awaited them, a future built not on the fragile foundation of conditional love, but on the solid ground of acceptance and belonging.